Like, you need to get back out and tell your story. You can help a lot of people.
You're doing this big thing and inspiring that next generation.
Because rebuilding, like, on a solid foundation, it's the only way to do it.
When was the inflection point that really, like, took that to the next level? From South Bend to Evansville and everywhere in between, this is Get In, the show focused on the Hoosier State and the incredible stories happening here today. I'm Nate Spengel, founder of Get Indiana, and I will be your host for today's conversation. I want to give a huge shout out to our newest partner, Hope Plumbing. Now, Hope Plumbing serves Indianapolis and the surrounding areas when it comes to all things plumbing, obviously. That includes sewer and drain, water heaters, water softeners, leak repairs, sump pump, gas lines, plumbing inspections, reverse osmosis system installation, router services, downspout installation, and septic tanks. What don't these guys do? Whenever I have trouble, I make sure to call Hope Plumbing. They always do a great job on my house. They're going to do a great job on your house. Go to hopeplumbing.com to check them out. Today, I'm joined by Matt Mason, a seasoned country singer-songwriter whose early love for traditional country music set him on a path from Triton Central High School in Fairland, Indiana, to the stages of Nashville, Tennessee. Overcoming personal challenges and adversity, including a battle with addiction, Matt's inspiring journey took him from opening for Charlie Daniels at 16 to winning CMT's Next Superstar in 2011. Now, as he gears up for a triumphant return with new music in 2024, his story continues to resonate with fans both in Indiana and beyond. Matt, welcome to Get In.
Thanks for having me.
Man, I am pumped up about this. So not many, I put out probably 100 episodes over the last 2 years. Not many people know, and I don't get to talk about it a ton, but I am a country music buff. Like,
oh, that's
I remember
great.
riding around in late 90s, early 2000s in my dad's truck listening to, at the time, like now they're classics, but at the time they were like, the best of the best then. And just the early influence country music had on my life, and from work ethic to the way you treat people, it's always resonated with me. Going from a town of 1,200 people. Now I live here in Indianapolis, but I always have some small town roots similar to yourself, right?
Oh, yeah. Isn't that weird that those are considered classics now?
Yeah. Well, dude, like in the past year, right? Toby Keith, like that was my childhood. The first song I could ever sing every word to was "Who's Your Daddy" by Toby Keith.
Okay.
And then it was right after that was "I Want to Talk About Me."
Yeah.
And just like, because he says Muncie, Indiana in there, right?
Oh,
like
yes.
that classic line.
He does. That's right.
Well, talk to me, man. Where was that first moment that you got introduced to country music or music in general, and where it started making an impact on your life?
Man, I was first introduced via my dad, and my dad was a big fan of, Haggard and Jones and Cash and Waylon and all those guys. And that kind of started my love affair with country music. And growing up, we went to a real small church in Shelbyville, Indiana, and a little Pentecostal church. And music was a big part in the Pentecostal realm, music's a big part of the service. And there was an old man there, Carl Downey, that him and I hit it off. I loved being around, as a little boy, I loved being around old people, because you could sit and listen to stories, and it just made more sense to me than hanging out with even people that were my age. So I spent a lot of time with him, and he kind of helped to cultivate that love. And we would stay in between, Sunday morning, Sunday evening service and play guitars and just talk about the music industry and music in general. And he was more into bluegrass. Bill Monroe, like he had a guitar that had been signed twice by Bill Monroe, and Flatt and Scruggs and those kind of Kentucky guys, which is where Carl was from. And he just kind of helped cultivate that love of music into me. And it just stuck with me, and it kind of hit, and it grew from there, really.
Yeah, and you picked up your first guitar at 11, I believe. Yeah. How quickly did you know that, hey, a career in music is something that you want to pursue?
Man, I honestly didn't know. It took a little bit. My granddad was a trucker, and he drove trucks his whole life, and he hauled cattle for a long time out of Arizona back east. So I wanted to be one of three things. I wanted to drive a truck, I wanted to move out west and be a cowboy, or I wanted to pursue music once I started playing guitar. And honestly, the music thing, I've kind of been able to do all three a little bit, we used to travel heavy. We don't travel as much anymore, but when we got to traveling, that's sort of like you're traveling, so you have that trucker aspect of it without the boredom of not having anything fun at the end of the journey, And then once we bought land and got horses, I was able to step into that realm. So really, it's been all three childhood dreams that I had have kind of came true.
Yeah, when you're on tour, I mean, like, how long you set out and go, you're traveling the country, like, how long from when you'd leave home to when you'd return when you're out on the road?
Generally, when we were traveling heavy, we would generally leave on a Wednesday and come home Sunday. So I had Monday, Tuesday, full days home, most of Wednesday. But we had two kids at the time when I was doing that, and it was hard. It was, and I'll get into that stuff. But the longest run we had was 19 days. That can be hard. That can be real hard.
So where did you get kind of that first big break where you're like, oh man, like this music thing is, like, a lot of people, music's a hobby, right? It's a stress relief. It's a creative outlet, but it's like you do that when you come home from your job at the lumberyard or, you know, working on houses or roofs or whatever. Where did you get your first big break and thought this could be a career?
We were in spring break. I was probably 14 or 15 at the time. My dad had heard me kind of messing around in my bedroom, playing and singing, and he said, man, I think there's something there. But he was nervous, you know, because as a parent, you're very biased to your kids, and your kids are the greatest, and at least for most parents. So he was nervous about that. He's like, I don't want this to be like, I think he's good and he really sucks bad, or, you know, whatever. So when we were on spring break, we went into just a little beach bar that was open, you know, all ages could come in. It was a restaurant bar, you know, and they had live music. And I got up and played on the person's break, and the owner came over and talked to my dad, and that kind of let him know, like, hey, I think this kid might be good, you know, maybe it's not just me as a dad. So he took me to an American Legion there, and an old man that was there, his son, the old man's son, ran a huge festival called the Eastern States Exposition. And it was like 4 or 5 kind of state fairs, but they all kind of congregated together. And it was a huge event. And so I sent him, we went home, made a CD. At the time, CDs were still the thing. So went into the studio, made that, sent it to this guy, Giuliano, up in Northeast. And he called back and said, hey, I have an opening slot. I book all the bands. I run the whole festival. Would you want to open for Charlie Daniels? And I said, yeah, I think I do. And so that really,
that might be
that
fun.
really was the first. I mean, I played the little beach bar, I played the American Legion, and then was opening for Charlie. And it was awesome, man. I got a chance to meet him, and just a good guy, you know, just a solid dude. And I remember after that show, I was waiting in the rain for him to maybe sign my cowboy hat. And an old man came out and he said, hey, Charlie's already went to bed. I was like, that's fine, you know, and I was just standing looking at the bus, and Charlie come off the bus, invited me on. And I'll never forget, man, he turned around and he pointed to that guy and he said, if anybody ever knocks on my bus door again, you come wake me up, because that's why we're out here. If I ever get a chance to do this, I want to be like that guy.
Amen. Holy smokes. Like, I mean, that's what you sign up for a little bit, right? You're doing this big thing and inspiring that next generation. And it's your first time playing. Like, how did the show go?
It was nerve-wracking. There was a lot of people. A lot of people to me. There was probably 5,000 to 10,000 people. I think 7,500, 8,000 would probably be a realistic guess. And it had slowed down a little bit because there was some thunderstorms in the area that day. But man, people still came out. There's something about it. Just I fell in love with it, and I was like, yeah, I think this is what I want to do.
Were you playing your own songs, or were you playing covers, or like where did you get the music that you were playing for that?
I was playing covers. I did some Merle Haggard stuff. I did some Waylon stuff. I may have thrown in something that I had written at the time, as good as I could write at 15 or 16. I think I was 16 when we did that date. But I was still coming into my writing and learning, and hadn't quite got that figured out yet.
Yeah, and then it ends up, right, you graduate high school from Triton Central,
Yeah.
and you moved to Nashville 6 months after graduating. What kind of got you from performing on stage, opening for Charlie Daniels, to 6 months after graduating, you're 18, maybe 19 years old, picking up shop and moving down to Nashville?
At the time, I knew I had to be in Nashville. I had to be around where the players were, where the movers and shakers were, congregating at. And I knew for country music that was Nashville. At least it was at the time. Charlie Daniels' booking agent at the time was a man who worked at William Morris Agency, and him and Giuliano were good friends. So Giuliano had put me in contact with Barry was his name when I was about 16 or 17. So I had been in contact with Barry for a couple of years, probably a year and a half to 2 years before I moved down. So I came down, and he was kind of a mentor for me at the time, somebody at least I could bounce things off of, I could talk to. He kind of helped to guide me. Both of the TV shows that I ended up doing, he was the reason I did that. He was the phone call of, hey, we have an opportunity. Would you like to do it? He really was a huge factor in the beginning part of my career.
You go from, playing that, was it the Eastern States?
It's called the Eastern States Exposition. The Big E is what they call it, the Big E.
The Big E. So you go from playing the Big E for your first show, opening up for Charlie Daniels. What did shows 2, 3, 4, and 5 look like? 10,000 people, it's only up from there, or what happens?
It's only down from there. No, there's none of them. It was a long time before we ever did anything like that again. So when I moved to town, I had heard of Tootsie's, and so that was the first place I went to. And a guy, Jimmy Schneider, who's passed away since, he looked like he was 130 when I came to town, but he had played there for years and years and years, and was originally from California, and he got up everybody. It was kind of his shtick, right? Like, he's the guy, when you get to town, he wants to get you up, because if anything ever happens with you, he wants to be able to claim, when that kid moved to town, I got him up first, So I went in. He always played the afternoon shift, and he got me up. It took a couple weeks, but owners heard about it, gave me a spot hosting a open mic on Saturday afternoons, and it just kind of slowly progressed from there. So
you go from senior in high school at Triton Central, moving to Nashville, getting to stand up at Tootsie's. Is that the Orchid Lounge?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I've been there a time or two.
Yeah.
It's you get there late at night on a weekend, and you gotta piece some stuff together there. You go from that hosting a Saturday afternoon spot. Is that like prime time on Broadway, or is that like
no?
Not
it's
desirable?
It's not necessarily prime time. The big shifts are 6 to 10. So they're 4-hour shifts. They're running 4-hour shifts down there. So 6 to 10 and 10 to 2, especially on the weekends. During the week, Monday through Thursday, 6 to 10 is the best spot, because people are out. That way they can get up, still go to work in the morning.
How long did you host the open mic for before the next thing came along, the next domino to fall in place?
Man, I did that for probably 2 or 3 months, then got a regular standing shift. I wasn't old enough to be in the bar. After 6 o'clock, you had to be 21. So whenever I would take a break, I was only 19 or 20 at the time. I would have to go outside to take my break. I couldn't stay inside. And then Barry called, and he said, hey, we have an opportunity. There's a show that they've been doing for a few years called Nashville Star. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. So went and tried out for that. That was one of the first things after I came to Nashville.
What year is that?
Golly, man. That was 2006, I believe. So
okay,
it was
so
a couple
06,
years.
You're like 19, 20 years old at that time?
Yeah. So it was a couple years after, a year and a half, 2 years after I moved to Nashville.
And what was the premise of Nashville Star?
So it was a live taping that they did, and they aired it, and then people would vote who stayed on. It started with 10 contestants, and it was only music based. So there was no cameras weren't on you at other times. You practice through the week. You perform once a week. They put us up in a hotel, the Opryland. We were there for 3.5 months for the whole ordeal. And it was every week or every other week they had a new episode come out, and people called in and voted.
How'd you do?
I ended up placing 4th on that, which was high enough. The top 4 made it to a tour that they did. So Chris Young, who's had some success in country, he was the first place winner of that season that I was on. So we went and did, after that season had wrapped up, we did a 3-month tour of, I think it was between 30 and 40 cities. We went out and toured 1,500 to 2,000 people coming out each night. So it was good crowds. That's kind of where my downturn in my personal life, kind of my downturn started. And then it was a roller coaster until, a few years ago. But
yeah, and you're thinking that's kind of like your first. Well, I mean, the Charlie Daniels, right? The Big E. That's like the first big break. But like when building a career in music, you get to go on tour. You're a Final Four, like you're a finalist of this show, And then you're going on a, 30 to 40 town tour. Seems like, things are panning up and it's starting to work out. What started happening there from a personal side and the, the new fame that brings?
It was, for me, man, it was coming from, I'm from Pleasant View, Indiana, which is it's a spot on a map. It's a tiny place. And coming here and being in Nashville it was kind of a culture shock to a degree, right? Coming from small farm town to Nashville, which was still relatively small compared to what it is now. But it was a shock. And then being around just all of the alcohol, the drugs, everything that is involved in the entertainment side that people know about, but they don't necessarily see all the time. It's there. It's always there. The entertainment industry revolves around like a never-ending party. There's always events to go to. There's always these things available, and to a young guy that I had no grounding at the time. I didn't know who I was. I was trying to be whatever I needed to be in order to succeed. And I just kind of got lost in the mix of all that.
You're kind of pursuing the dreams of being a rock star, right? Being a country music star. And the songs all stem from somewhere, right? When people are singing about all the stuff that this life brings, that inspiration, all that comes from their life experiences. So where was the moment where you kind of admitting or like talking about the issue is a lot easier than fixing the issue, right? So where was the moment when you maybe realized like, man, this isn't who I want to be, or this isn't right? My
downturn started in 2005, and it wasn't until the end of 2016. So it was about 11 years and that was a roller coaster, right? Like I got married during that time. I would stop living hard and I would try to clean up a little bit. My wife and I got married. We had a daughter. 15 months later, we had her son. That kept me grounded for a time. Then I got back out to doing the same stuff I was doing previously. I was yo-yoing with God, really, is what I'd been doing. And it's like he would let me get just far enough that I wouldn't hang myself on the chain and then kind of pull me back in. I was only stopping what I was doing to appease the people that were around me, right? I was never doing it for myself. I was never going, I need to be a better husband. I need to be a better father. I need to be a better friend and actually make something of myself. It was, these people want me to do this. I'm going to do this to get them off my back for a time. And then I can go right back to what I'm doing once I kind of, smooth the rough waters out just a little bit.
Yeah, the yo-yoing, that's a great way to describe that, right? So you go on that 3-month tour after the first show, come back to Nashville, and then are you still on Broadway playing covers, or what does your life look like? Like, give me an example or like a feel for what life looked like when you came back from that tour.
So like I go out and we do this thing and I think, oh man, I'm going to be a star. Like this is my break. This is where everything happens. And because of the problems I was having that I didn't know other people could see, that really put a halt on folks in the industry wanting to work with me, because they're going, man, we've seen this guy, like he's a little unpredictable. We don't know who we're going to get. Once I got to stage, I was always okay. But so I really went back to playing Broadway again. I went out and did some dates. I was starting to go out and play acoustic shows. Me and a guitar player would go out and do some stuff, but never anything consistent.
And that leads you to the next television show.
Yep. So Barry called me again, and that was in 2012, I believe, 2011, 12, somewhere in that
Was that
department.
CMT Next?
CMT's Next Superstar.
Yeah, yep. CMT Next. That was 2011, I think, when you end up, I'll fast the story, is you win that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Were the complications and all the extra stuff, and I don't know how much you want to share with that for listeners of the hard living that you're talking about. Was that hindering, like, were they hesitant to bring you on the show in the first place?
No, because I had been in a pretty good place for long enough that I had it together. So I went through a season of, substance abuse, and then it really turned to alcoholism for the remainder, and dabbled in some other stuff, but never got back in anything hard. So I was able to at least keep myself together enough to perform and do my job. I got that opportunity. Barry called me again, was like, hey, we have a show. I was like, I don't think I want to do it. I don't want to be a reality show guy. Like, I just don't want to do that. It doesn't seem genuine to me. And my wife's like, what else are you doing? I'm like, what else you're like, you're playing Broadway? I mean, You know, like she kind of brought some a reality check of like, you're not a superstar. Like you're not something grand and, you know, that you going to do another show. So anyway, I went and did it. That was a great experience. That was more reality show based. So they filmed inside a house we were staying in, and I won that. That led to a record deal with Warner Brothers. We did a Luke Bryan tour. So Luke Bryan and myself and Lee Brice and Josh Thompson, we went out, same type of tour. It was 30 to 40 dates, about 3 months.
How big? This is 2011, 2012. How big is Luke Bryan at the time?
So he's starting to play college size arenas at that time. So they were big. They were the biggest thing that I had ever played consistently. Charlie had about the same amount of people at his outdoor event that he did, but that was a one-off, right? It was one show with Charlie, and then that didn't happen again until after the CMT show. From
the vibe in your music, like Luke Bryan kind of gets the like pop country tag thrown on him. And so like when they were selecting artists, you know, like were you hesitant with that, or were you like, hey, sign me up, let's go rip it?
That was part of the deal. So it didn't matter. I didn't have much of a say in that. And Luke, man, he's such a nice guy. I'm not a personal fan of his style of music, but that doesn't take away from the guy that he is. The guy's solid, man. He was so good to us, and he actually helped. We were out in a van. We were in a minivan for the first couple of weeks, and he worked it out that we could get on one of the buses, and he made sure we always had food, and just a good guy. I mean, he gave his bunk up one night for my guitar player. Like, he's a good dude. He really is. And that's why he's had, you know, the success that he's had and all that. But so yeah, they put me on that. And again, like, it's been this ongoing yo-yo thing, right? Where like something good would start to happen and I would self-sabotage, right? Yeah. So I go like, oh, this is starting to get good. I had not been drinking for quite a few months at that point, probably a year. I had stopped drinking. That tour kind of allowed me to dabble in it just a little bit. After that tour is when it got the darkest for me. After that was over, we kept going out on the road. We obviously weren't playing to thousands of people. We were playing to, 200 a night. But it got my drinking, my my going outside the marriage and all that stuff, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until 2016.
Hey everyone, quick pause in the action to introduce you to Flutterman Von Reest, a true hidden gem in Indiana, especially for all you watch aficionados out there. Founded by an Indiana State graduate from Batesville, this family-owned brand has deep Hoosier roots dating back to the 1830s. They are even proud members of the Society of Indiana Pioneers, which I didn't know existed but is a sweet organization. They are based in Indy and are redefining luxury watches. Meticulously crafted in Kokomo by a certified watchmaker and his apprentice. The designs blend classic elegance with a modern twist. Don't miss their Chase Briscoe Race Day VIP Experience giveaway, an incredible opportunity for race fans. Chase is an awesome NASCAR driver from Mitchell, Indiana. You're going to be learning more about him soon. Follow Flutterman Von Reest to explore their stunning collections and join their journey to greatness. And so you go from, you're on tour, playing to thousands of people, with Luke Bryan and that whole tour. Personally, like how when you kind of see the taste of what big time looks like, how did that, like, internally, emotionally, going to a smaller 200 person, those kind of shows? I don't know. Like, I think people think record deal and millions of dollars and this, that, and it's all glitz and glamour. But like, I mean, from the inside, when you're the artist, like, how does that make you feel?
I had a hard time with the record label, right? So all of this stuff is presented. You have a record deal, I'm working on with the record label. Simultaneously, I'm out on the road. I'm seeing what is presented before me. I have an opportunity now to play in front of these people. Just as much as I was self-sabotaging, I was also self-preserving in the sense that they were pushing music on me, right? They're saying, hey, I'm going out with an A&R, around Nashville to publishing houses, and I'm picking up songs and I'm listening to them, and they're telling me, you need to do this. This song is what's going to work. This is what's working on radio. And I kept arguing with them going, I can't do that. I can't sell that. I'm not selling myself out for $1. I won't do that because it's not genuine to me. I'm not a salesman. If I were, I've had a lot of friends that have had a lot of success because they were good at doing whatever it took to reach the next level. And I just wouldn't play that game. I wasn't good at that. So my A&R had got fired. I was still at Warner Brothers, and we were getting ready to release a project solo. So I'd been at Warner for 2 years. The tour that we'd done with Luke Bryan was well in the past. We'd been out doing our own shows, starting to play some more original songs, realizing what works for me. So I was fixing to release one of the first EPs that we did, which had E on it, and Chasing Stardust and Feather in Her Halo and that stuff. They're like, you need to make sure that Warner knows about this, because if you put this out and it does well, they're going to try to pick it up, and they're going to try to, right, then they'll own it because you're under contract with them. So I went in and met with Espo. John Esposito was the president at the time. And I said, hey, is there any way I can get out of this deal? And he said, absolutely, won't be a problem. You don't have an A&R. I don't want to hold you back. So
what does A&R mean?
The A&R is an artist representative. So they're my point person. They're my point of contact inside the building at Warner. So I didn't have that. And Warner had, most record labels have 2 to 4 A&Rs, and they're handling all the artists that are at that label. They're helping them find songs, make sure their projects get done. Anything that's on the recording label side of, they help facilitate all those things. And so anyway, Espo said, man, you're free and clear. I'll have a attorney write up the letter. And, you know, that was $115,000 that they had put into recording, it was a small advancement that they had gave me at the beginning of it, which for them is a tax write-off. But for me was a huge relief to go, man, I don't have to pay back $115,000. So I was able to walk away from that. And then we put out that project, and it didn't do much. You know, we sold it on the road. I was putting it out through online distribution, TuneCore, CD Baby, something like that. At the end of 2016, a company out of Fort Worth, Texas, Smith Music Group, had heard my stuff. They flew out to meet with me. And we did the whole deal on a handshake because I was nervous about signing with someone. And Rick said, man, just give us 3 months. If we're working well, great. If we're not, great. So since 2016, we've worked together on a handshake, and it's been great.
And that was when, so, I mean, obviously you're, you know, some of your biggest songs are from that project. Mm-hmm. So you put it out, it doesn't really do a whole lot. When was the inflection point that really, like, you know, took that to the next level?
So end of 2016, I was tired of where I was at in life. I was tired of how I was living, yada, yada. I was in New Mexico, and I got up early one morning, grabbed a cup of coffee, went out to smoke a cigarette, and I started a conversation with God that changed the rest of my life up to this point. And for the first time, I was honest with God. I wasn't going to hold back. I wasn't going to pretend. And I told him, I said, look, I don't doubt your existence. I don't doubt you're real. I don't doubt Christ. Like, all of those things are easy for me to believe. That wasn't my struggle. My struggle is with believing that you love me. So I'll give you a few months. And if my life's not different, then I'll go right back to what I'm doing right now. Just for the first time, I was actually honest with him to go, I'll give you my life, you know, and I'll do it honestly. So anyway, you know, a few months goes by, and I noticed a drastic internal difference in myself. One of the stipulations I put on that conversation was, I'm never going to tell anybody anything I've ever done. So don't ever ask me to do that, because that's off the table. At the end of 2017, I was put into a position where I either had to be honest with my wife for the first time, truly honest, or I had to essentially revert back to how I was living before. And so I sat her down, and I was like, you know, she had seen this song and dance before, right? Like, I had been like, oh, I'm going to get better. You know, that was an ongoing thing in our marriage for the majority of it. So at the end of 2017, I sat her down, and I was like, look, here's everything I've ever done, ever, in our marriage, from the time that we were married up until this point. Anytime I've stepped out of the marriage, anytime I've done anything that was a direct hurt to you, right? And that was about an 8-month conversation that took place. But during that time is when I had been with Smith Music for a little over a year at this point, and E just hit. It hit during that time. And I remember specifically, I was going upstairs for a couple hours a day, every day during that 8 months going, God, search my heart. I want to get everything out of here. I want to be transparent with my wife. I don't want anybody to have anything on me. And so going through that, I remember like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do for my career? Is there anything I can do? Like how, and I'm thinking and praying and asking and seeking and doing all this crap. And I remember in my, like inside, I had this internal voice that said, you'll not point your finger at anybody but me. I don't really know what that means. So in 2018, we pushed the song to secondary radio because we saw like it's doing pretty good. Like we're making a decent living now. My wife didn't have to work anymore. I wasn't having to tour. I was, being a dad, being a husband, being things that most normal people just are on their own. I was able to learn how to be those things. And so we pushed the song to secondary radio, and man, all of our numbers, all of our analytics, everything just flatlined. It didn't die, but it just flatlined. And I was like, man, like we put so much effort into this. We put money, a bunch of money. We bought a Sprinter van, went out to these radio stations and like did our thing. And for a few months, everything just stayed just same thing, man. I was upstairs and I'm frustrated and I'm talking to God and I'm like, man, what the frick's going on? Like I've done all this work and I put all this effort in and blah, blah, blah. And when I finally got quiet and quit my moaning, that same internal voice I heard again and said, I already told you once, you'll only point your finger at me. And I was like, fine, that's what I'll do. And so since then, it's God really put me into a position that I can't take the credit for the success of the songs that we've had because we didn't put any money into it. We've not marketed anything. Other artists have asked Smith Music that are there, like, what are you guys doing with Matt? I want to do the same thing. And Rick and DJ are like, man, we don't know. He claims it's God. So if that's what it is, then that's what it is. But, he's either right about it or he's lying about it because we've not done anything to push that. So God's kind of put me in that position that I can't lie about it.
Yeah. And for the scope of like, when you talk about things start taking off, like E has 100 million streams now on Spotify.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's taking off. Right. And you're saying it's not from like, I think you see and you hear stories of like industry and like, making certain people blow up that have the look, the image, this, that, and the other thing. Like you're saying, man, like when you kind of took a step back and just, let God do his thing. He puts you in the position. I do want to touch on, man, you got to sit down and have that 8-month ongoing conversation with your wife. Like that has to be, just a wild, difficult, challenging, emotional time, especially for her.
So like I said, I was put into that position and it was in November of 2017. It was before the holidays came around and I sat her down and like I said, I just said, here's everything I've ever done. There's going to be a lot of things I don't remember. I wasn't in my right mind. If you want to know, then I'll tell you everything. And my wife is one of the most honest, transparent, blunt individuals that I know. And that's what she needs because that's how she is. And she was like, I want to know everything. I don't care. I don't care. Like, just tell me. It was like every couple of weeks. Right. I'm going upstairs and I'm spending some time like reading the Bible and I'm praying and I'm getting to know God. I'm getting to know myself. I was constantly asking him, like, search my heart. Like, I need everything in here to come out. And so every couple of weeks I have to go back to her again and be like, hey, there was this other time and I was here and this happened. And, and dude, I did this for 8 months. I mean, it was an 8-9 month every few weeks. And I was getting pissed, man. And I went to God and I'm like, look, dude, I'm doing what I said I would do. I'm keeping up my end of the deal here, but I feel like you're not quite doing that. And I had this last thing I was holding on to. I held on to that for probably 4 or 5 weeks. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going back to her again. Like, this is like pulling the Band-Aid off, scratching the wound, pouring salt on it, like, and then pointing and laughing, it sucked. It sucked. There's no other way to say it. And so I'd held on to this thing, just kept going and searched my heart. Nothing else came up. So I went to her and I was like, hey, laid it out on the table. We went that afternoon. We went to get some tacos from this taco shop. And when we were walking in, there was a baby shoe on the ground. And I was like, wouldn't that be funny if you were pregnant? And she was like, I'm not pregnant. Get home that night. She's like, hey, you know what? It's been a few days. You know, I'm a little bit late, which is not unnormal for me, but would you mind running to the drugstore? So I did. And she was pregnant. So that night, I'm just getting back into really doing social media stuff. But at that time, I had stepped away from it completely. I wasn't touching it. I wasn't doing it. But I got on that night, and there's a guy who's a evangelist, I guess, like a traveling minister. And he had made a post, and he said, today is 8/8 of 18. And 8 in the Bible stands for new beginnings. And it was like this pressure, this relief, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it was like something was lifted. And I looked at my wife and I said, I'm honest, like I'm transparent. Everything I have to tell you is done. No man has anything on me anymore. We can be in any situation, any setting. Anybody can tell any story they want. And I'm not going to be like, oh man, I hope they don't say this, or I hope they don't mention this, you know, which I lived that way for so many years. There's something about, like, it's why I started doing the YouTube stuff that I'm doing. And I'm trying to gear it for men. It's not just for men. Like, I mean, women can benefit from it as well. But like, there's something about a man getting back to, or a person getting back to ground zero. Like getting back to quit putting on a front, quit trying to be and pretend like you're something, quit trying to make the world think that your life is better than it is. Like just die to yourself essentially and get everything out. Like admit that you're a screw up, that you have problems, whether you follow Christ or whether you don't. Like that was my route. And I know for a fact that that works. But if that's not something somebody's going to do, like just get honest, like be honest with your family, be honest with people around you, and rebuild your life from that point. Because rebuilding like on a solid foundation, it's the only way to do it, right? It's like we're building a house right now. And if we didn't have, in any house you build, if you don't have a solid foundation for it, the house could be beautiful, it could look awesome, but when a wicked storm comes through, it's going to knock that thing down. And it's no different for our personal life. Like if we can build on something solid, when that stuff arises, when bad situations happen, like it, I don't know, we just walk through it easier. You know, it's, we're not trying to hide something of like, I'm having to deal with the pressures of life plus hide the life that I'm living over here. And like, that's just freaking hard, man. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Well, give us a look into like the career trajectory, right? You know, 8/8 of 18, you're honest, you make these changes. How does your career arc kind of go from there? And like whether it's streams or downloads or albums or whatever it might be.
So everything was still growing. And we have ups and downs. Like we have some months that are way better, some months that aren't as good, but everything's been really consistent. And it started, actually what's crazy, and I've learned with God is like, he knows our heart, right? So he knew the direction I was headed. He knew I was going to stay the course, and everything had started shifting months before I ever came fully clean with everything, right? Like I had the initial conversation, but I hadn't got everything out, but everything was already starting to work that direction. And honestly, man, I had no intention of ever going back on the road again. I was like, I'm done with that. Like if God writes me a personal letter, is what I used to tell my family. Like if he writes me a personal letter, mails it to me, I might consider then. Was it last year? Last year was the first time we did dates since like 2016, 17. I think I did one in 2018, but hadn't done anything, man. And I wasn't planning on it. We were making enough from the streaming that we were able to live and survive and have a good life. And my wife was like, you know what, man, like you probably need to get back out there and tell your story. Like you need to get back out, and because there's a lot of people that may never go to church. They may never, step foot in that setting. But if you go meet them where they're at, just singing your songs, not trying to preach to them, and tell a snippet of your story during that 60 to 90 minute show that we do, you can help a lot of people. And I was like, okay, it's great. She's like, I really think you should focus on men. Like, I think that men need to get back to manhood. And this was all a few years ago. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of stupid. I don't think that's I don't think that's the route I want to take. So we went back out last year, did some dates, selling tickets, and we did okay. We were getting 100 to 200 people out, which I thought was awesome that people were buying tickets to come watch a show. I haven't been out for years, so we're trying to kind of rebuild that thing. I went on a hunting trip a few weeks ago, and it was a group of guys, right? And they invited me to come out to tell my story, play a few songs, but like, we just want to hear your testimony. We've heard a little bit of it, and I think it can benefit. And when I did that, I was there for a week. There was 2 separate groups of hunters that came in, and just the effect of what happened there with these guys. And I left there and I called my wife and I was like, man, there's something about men. Like, I want to help men. Like, I want my music to reach out and then be able to get men back to manhood, like leading their families and just being men again. Like, we've emasculated men, I feel like, in this country via the church, via politics, wherever you stand on all that crap. She was like, don't you remember we had that conversation? I told you that a few years ago. And I was like, no, I don't think you did. I think that's my idea. I think I came up with that one on my own. So that's kind of where we're at now, man. It's like we have dates this year. We're going out and doing dates this year, and I'm trying to grow the YouTube side of stuff, not just for the spreading of my music, but like for this, trying to help people.
Yeah.
Like, if my music can open the door to get somebody out of a dark place or get them back to, like I said, like back to zero, so they can start building from there. That's kind of the goal in this whole thing, man, really, for me.
So where did you play in 24? And I know you have a fun Indiana show coming up in 25.
Yeah. So our big market is Texas. So we did some dates out there. That was our best selling. There was one place that we almost sold out. We were just a few tickets shy of selling out. We played Atlanta, which is surprisingly a decent market for us. We had quite a few people there. We hadn't came to the Midwest, and I know the Midwest. I knew going back to there. I used to play Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia. Illinois was that was our main travel focus. We didn't do anything up there. We played Texas. We played Atlanta. We went to Washington. Played a festival up in Washington. Just kind of testing.
I bet that eastern side of Washington State, they like some country western music out there.
They do,
for
man.
sure.
They had it was called Farm Jam, and it was the most beautiful setting, dude. It's like down in this valley of like hay fields and like ranches everywhere, and these huge mountains all around. You're sitting in the bowl of these mountains. It was freaking awesome. We're testing the market, so we were testing last year. We're testing again this year to see like we're playing. Our first show's in Mississippi in March. Then we're in Texas again in April. We're going back to Georgia. We have Indiana, Illinois. We have West Virginia. We have a date in Ohio. And we're just checking to see, like, where are we doing the best? Where's the most people coming out? And we're kind of focusing on those markets, trying to, like, see. So, like, we go to Mississippi. I've never been there. We're going to see, does it do well? Do we get people coming out? Because if we don't, let's not waste our effort going there, because if things take off where touring gets better, more people are coming out, we can come back to those smaller markets, where more people are going to want to come out. The more popularity you gain, right? And the more your music reaches, the more people come out. So, we're playing the Strand in Shelbyville, which is going to be...
When is that show?
Oh, man, I knew you'd ask.
I'm like looking it up right now.
June? Is it June?
August 16th, 7:30, Saturday at the Strand in Shelbyville.
Yep, August. That's right. Yep.
Did you play that growing up?
I played there one time. So I played there one time after the CMT show, if I'm not mistaken. There's a big show they do on the Circle that we played after the, like a festival that we played after Nashville Star. But yeah, so we're hoping that, ticket sales go great there. That's kind of a hometown show. So I know we've got a lot of tickets already sold. I think it was halfway.
I was going to say, did you just increase the venue there? I thought I saw that it was sold out.
It could be at this point. Illinois was sold out.
Gotcha.
So
I got to get on it, and I got to get my tickets for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'll sell out before August comes around. I have a good feeling about that. We'll sell that out. We sold Illinois out. We're getting ready to sell out just north of Houston in Conroe. There's a place that we played last year there.
Yeah.
So we're building that thing up, man, and it's cool to see. Like, it's great to be back out playing. I've got stipulations that I've set in place to keep me from veering off. You have to be able to bring your kids. It has to be a venue that, I don't care if they sell alcohol. That's not a struggle for me anymore, but not even something I do. But you have to be able to bring your family, right? Like if you can bring your kids into the place, I'll play. If I have the affordability to bring a family member, if I can't bring somebody from my family, and as a fan, you can't bring your family, I'm not going to play those places. So I just think, man, families need to get out and do more stuff. And going to shows is a great way for everybody to burn off energy. Like kids can come out. Everybody loves music, And if you have a place where like you can bring your kids where everybody's not getting, trying to just see how drunk they can get before the night's over. But yeah, have a drink or two, have a good time, enjoy yourself. But people are there to hear the music,
Man, I love that. And I think I'm sure that Shelby County, right, the home county will show out for your show in August. And I think that's going to be
so, man.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to being back here.
I'm going to put it on the calendar and I'll get a crew and we'll come down. Because, I mean, it was wild. I had no idea that you were from Indiana originally, but I've heard your music before. Like Spotify Shuffle and things like that. And one of my buddies sends Indiana Boy to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second. And I start putting it together and I reach out and end up I think that's just so awesome to see people with Hoosier roots doing these inspiring things and this getting back out there on the road. Like it just worked out that you were coming to Indiana in a couple months anyway. That's awesome. Quick pause in the action. Do you want to be able to submit questions to my future guests in advance? Do you want access to exclusive discounts with our Hoosier partners? Do you want to make sure you're invited to all of our private in-person events across the state? If you answered yes to all or any of those questions, you need to head to Instagram and subscribe to our Get In Insiders channel. For $4.99 a month, you're going to be able to ask our guests questions, get great discounts, and above all, help us fund all of this amazing Indiana content that we create. Head over to Instagram at Nate Spangle and subscribe. Now let's get back to the episode. I know we're coming to the end. And I have some fun, rapid fire, lightning round kind of questions for you as we wrap up here. So the first question's our Younger Years segment. It's brought to you by our friends at Orr Fellowship. They're a great organization here in Indianapolis, helping develop young business leaders across the state. So Matt, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self?
Be yourself. Don't change who you are because you think that's what people want you to be.
I love that. I think, especially given your, when you move to Nashville and there's this mold of country music stars and you go through that and you learn those lessons, I think being yourself is, the most powerful thing people can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I tried for years to be anything that I thought would make me more successful, and it doesn't work. Because eventually your colors are going to show.
Yeah. And isn't it funny, right? Where it's when people try so hard to be something that they're not, and then when they start, you finally be comfortable with who you are, and then, turns out people like authenticity, and sometimes it starts to work there.
That's what has worked best for me. When you're real and people know you're real, people are drawn to that. We live in a world of a lot of fake. With social media, you can be whatever, act like whatever you want. But when somebody's just real and honest, that's human. That's being a human.
What artist has had the biggest influence on you and your music?
Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and Merle Haggard are probably the three biggest artists that their music has affected me, their life story has affected me, and them just being real. Cash was who he was, and that's why he was as big as he was. He wasn't the greatest singer ever, but people knew that he didn't pretend. He wore his troubles on his sleeve. Waylon just had a cool factor about him. There was just something cool about Waylon. And his music resonated with me, like that kick drum, that in the 70s, he did something that nobody was doing. He was mixing rock music with country music, and just the songwriting of Haggard. He told the truth. And I read his autobiography when I was in high school and learned that most of those songs, 90% of them are either true or there's a lot of truth in them. And when you know that about somebody and you go, you're not just singing something to sing it. You're singing your life, that, I don't know, that means something.
Yeah. Oh man. That raw, real emotion. It's you see a lot of the more outlaw country, Western music today where it's, they're pulling on past experiences. And I think you talked about, oh man, in one of your commentary albums of it's not necessarily that you've lived all this, but you get in a room with three people and you combine all of your life experiences into this this piece of art and this song. And man, that's powerful.
100%. Willie Nelson said one time, they said, "Why do you like songwriting so much?" And he said, "Because I can write my life story in a code that nobody understands but me." And I was like,
Man,
yeah, that's true. You can
that's
get
powerful.
out what's in here. You can get it out. There's little bits of truth. Some are more true than others, but there's little bits of truth in all of it, I think.
What's your favorite lyric from any country song?
Live for, I think the name of it's Live Forever. It's a Billy Joe Schaefer song. Just that whole song. Like that whole song to me is great lyrically. I'm not going to be here forever. When I leave, my music will still be here. Don't forget about me. Know that I'll always love you. It's kind of the gist of the overall song,
Yeah.
but that's a good one, man.
When you're performing, what's your favorite song to perform live?
Today, probably in the last couple of years, is either Where I've Been or E. And that's because last year, for the first time, we do Where I've Been in the set. E's obviously our last song. That's the big song everybody wants to hear. So we do Where I've Been a few songs before that. And dude, the first time we were playing live again and people are singing back the chorus. And I was like, this is a little surreal. Like, I never have had that. I've seen it done at concerts, had other, never for myself. And so that there's something about that, like where we allow the crowd to sing back, and it's fun, man. It's a fun song to play.
And that has to be just like an incredible experience, right? You hear whether it's 100, 1,000, just singing back like something that came out of your head that you put down and recorded and you cut it, and man, that's just it makes the hair in the back of my neck stand up.
It's a like I said, it's a very surreal feeling. It's a humbling feeling, I'll say that.
Yeah.
To know that this music is reaching people.
Yeah, man. What's your favorite venue to play in Nashville?
I've only played it a few times, but probably the Bluebird Cafe. It is a singer-songwriter place. You go in there to listen to the music. Broadway was great for what it was. All the places down there, played there for years. It helped to make a living. I didn't enjoy it. You're not, people aren't listening. You're playing for a party. You're playing for an atmosphere. And on the road, like we travel with a 3-piece, we travel with an acoustic guitar, a cajon player, and a bass player. So it's a very broke down show for that reason. So people that are coming out for my shows, at least, have said over the years, like, "Oh, the band was fun. Like they're great players, blah, 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 blah." But like they drown you out. We come here to hear you sing. And I was like, okay, how can we do that? Still make the people that want the band thing happy, and keep the people that are really coming out for the singer-songwriter aspect of stuff. Like, how do we kind of merge those two things? And I think we figured out a great way of doing it, where we have some, there's some background music going on, but people can still hear the lyrics. They can still hear the stories, and that's what we're trying to do.
I think that's powerful. I actually wanted, you brought the thought, right? You're performing on Broadway, I don't know, you're doing 4-hour shifts. Do you make enough to make a living if you just perform on Broadway?
You can. We were, for a couple of years, I was playing 8 hours a day. So I would sing
7 days a week?
6 and 7 days a week, yeah. I'd do a 6 to 10 and then a 10 to 2, or a 2 to 6 in the afternoon and then a 6 to 10, or sometimes you do a split double where you do like a 2 to 6, you have 6 to 10 off, and then you play 10 to 2 that night. Did that for a long, long, long time. And, it builds your chops up for sure. Like it definitely builds up your ability to be on stage, to interact with people when you're up there. And it builds that comfort level. And it teaches you to still play when people aren't paying attention, which is a very hard thing for me to do. I start getting a little bit frustrated when I'm like, all right, listen, if you guys, I've never pulled a Jamie Johnson where I'm like, you guys ain't paying attention, I'm out. I don't have that status, but I appreciated the video I saw him where he did that. And I was like, you guys come to listen to a show and you're not listening, and he's a singer-songwriter at heart. So I get it. I get it.
All right. Final 2 questions left. There's kind of bringing back to your Indiana roots. One, what influence did Shelby County, Fairland, Indiana have on your music career?
Being in a rural area, I think, has helped me a lot. It's given me inspiration to write from. Like, I have good roots. I came from a great family. My parents were awesome parents. They were believers, like all that stuff. But just being in an honest setting with honest people, people that I grew up with, they were who they were, and you liked them or you didn't. but it was pre-social media, it was pre-Instagram and pre all of this stuff. And those old farmers out there, they just are who they are. And that has an impact on people. At least it did for me.
Final question. We ask this to every guest that comes through. So when you're back in Indiana, what is a hidden gem in Indiana that we need to check out?
Frosty Boy.
What is that?
Frosty Boy is a place I believe it was only open in the summer. It's in New Pal. They've got great tenderloin sandwiches and they got great milkshakes.
Frosty Boy in New Pal, temporarily closed, only open in the summer.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to have to go over there. Oh, that ice cream does look pretty good.
And if you're a tenderloin fan, you know, when I grew up in Indiana, you go to the fairs and you get the tenderloins and then your bun is like this. You know, that's a tenderloin. And you come to the state fairs in Tennessee or other places we've played, you know, through the years. And I'm like, I'd like a tenderloin, you know, sandwich. And they bring out this little piece of meat, like, yes. And I'm like, that's not it. Where's the rest of it? Like, I shouldn't even be able to get to the bun. You know, the bun should be my meal tomorrow.
Yeah, you got to take like 2 or 3 bites before you hit any bun or lettuce.
100%. That's how it should be.
I love it. Matt, man, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And for those that don't, you need to go follow the YouTube channel where you're putting out a bunch of inspiring content about, you know, getting back to the roots. And I think I just watched it was like 5 lessons that men need to know. And they're very, very practical. And it's like, it's interesting that some, you know, young men grow up and don't hear those things from grandpa or don't hear those things from their dads.
We have a father. This is a big fatherless generation, right? Men are, they don't have a dad at all, or they don't know him, or they have a dad that's so busy at work or on their cell phone or whatever that they're not being raised properly. So what I'm trying to do is just create a place where people can come get practical advice. It's not something like, it's not making huge changes, right? It's little bitty changes and just things that you can do that are pretty simple. They don't take a lot of effort, but you start adding those things up, and I think it makes you a better man.
I love it, man. Well, hey, we'll catch you at the show. It's August 16th. That's a Saturday at 7:30 at the Strand in Shelbyville. I'm excited. I'm going to get a crew together and we'll come down for that. And man, just keep up the great work. Keep doing everything you're doing and sharing your story. It's very, very inspiring. And you're making a lot of Hoosiers here in Indiana proud. Thank you for listening to this episode of Get In. If you like what you heard, make sure you leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is made possible by our friends up at Sweetwater. Whether you're looking to start a podcast or take your content to the next level, click the link in the description to see all of my gear recommendations at sweetwater.com. If you want a behind the scenes look at everything we're doing across the state, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nate Spangle. Thank you so much for listening and being part of what makes the Hoosier State great. We'll see you next time here on Get In.